Strange Ride is brought to you commercial-free through the generous support of our patrons. Visit strangerideshow.com and click on Donate to help keep the history of the weird on the digital airwaves. For parents like me, here you go. For parents like me who choose to share 2010's revival of My Little Pony with my children, the animated series' emphasis on social-emotional learning is the primary draw. However, these lessons are framed in distinctly occult terms. That's occult. O-C-C-U-L-T. The series is subtitled Friendship is Magic, and while this may suggest that friendship is awesome, in the context of the show, it often means that it is literally a matter of spells, potions, and esoteric books. The show's... I'm just getting started here. The show's association with real-world occultism in the form of pony-inspired tulpas shows the degree to which it has successfully tapped into a new age spirituality that also appeals to adult fans. The protagonist, Twilight Sparkle, descends according to the theosophical paradigm. We've got an hour ahead of us here, friends.
I'm sorry.
Just hearing you say Twilight Sparkle in such a professional voice.
How much
Twilight,
do you love her, though?
She descends, I love her, descends according to the theosophical paradigm from the palace of Princess Celestia to Ponyville in order to learn, grow, and ultimately metamorphose into the show's version of the divine feminine, a princess with both secular and spiritual power. At the end of the third season, she achieves an incomplete apotheosis, and the audience learns the degree to which her friendships are, like Aleister Crowley's goetian demons, actually external manifestations of her own consciousness in need of harmonizing. In Crowleyite fashion, the show celebrates the pony's individuality, but after Twilight Sparkle's initiation, it troubles personal identity by requiring the ponies to surrender a significant aspect of their ego-based power. I undertake a close reading of the occult aspects of My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic advisedly. Danger comes from two directions. First, postmodern conspiracy theory is riddled with over-analyses of popular culture that attempt to prove the existence of a plot among cultural elites to convert children to devil worship. Twilight Sparkle and her friends can hardly be blamed for Western secularization, but it is reasonable to read the non-superficial occultism in the show as a reflection of a broader cultural search for what Charles Taylor calls third ways of knowing, that are neither wholly faith-based nor wholly materialist. Second, an overzealous proselytizer for the ponies might attempt to transform the show into a religious text by imbuing it with meanings that aren't there. The animated series manifests a particular version of the occult journey and a particular view of the divine feminine. The fact that it draws upon esoteric themes and ideas provides a lens with which to interrogate its values and meanings and recognize that, intentionally or not, it is saying something about postmodern spirituality to the millions of children who watch it. But let's not pretend that it's actually some sort of grimoire. At its peak in 2014, the show had an audience of around 12 million, and it continues to be streamed on Netflix, where it ranks in the top 0.2% in terms of audience demand, although streaming services are famously cagey about their audiences. And that, by the way, is where I have discovered the show and watch it with my 6-year-old today. All right. Yes, you are listening to a flipped Strange Ride, which Savannah feels may properly be an Occult Confessions, but you know, that's what happens when you let me take over. My name is Rob Thompson, your guy who sits in on this show.
Yes.
I don't know titles here in the Strange Ride-verse.
The smartest guy I know.
Yeah, that's who I am. Yeah, that's Savannah Verrett.
Talking about My Little Pony and religion, which is honestly actually really interesting, but it is kind of hilarious hearing like Twilight Sparkle next to
Charles
Aleister
Taylor's
Crowley.
Third Ways of Knowing. Yeah. Yep. That's
yes.
the fun of today's
Yes.
exploration.
Rob is doing me a favor by doing this today because like I was researching stuff and then I got COVID again. And I just haven't been able to really do work on anything this entire month. I've just been so tired and out of it that I was like, I can't do an episode this month. And Rob was already working on the My Little Pony thing like we talked about last month with Stockholm. So I was like, can you do that? And he's like, absolutely, let me do it, please.
Yeah, this is actually in preparation for a conference paper I'm going to give at an academic conference
Which
later
is so cool.
this semester. Yeah. Evangeline Olsen, but you're not the only one joining us on this strange ride.
Oh, no.
Evangeline Olsen.
Hello.
See, I'm getting the pattern. Hey, what's up? You had a YouTube show based on
I
pony
did,
adventures.
yeah. Technically, it was my sister's. She would say that, but we co-had this. It had 2,000 followers on it.
What's up, Annalisa?
I know. Like, it was pretty cool.
That's Evangeline's sister, by the way.
But then she erased it from the internet, and she refuses to let anyone see it.
She won't even let me see it, which is upsetting because
the public would like to know.
that was the start of my acting journey, really.
Julian Dobbs is here.
Hello.
Fan of animation of all kinds.
That is true.
Yeah.
I'm a big animation guy.
You're our animation expert today.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I guess I am, yeah.
I feel like I should also say that it's like, I know practically nothing about My Little Pony. Like, this is like one of the bigger pop culture topics that I feel like Rob knows much more about it than I do. I've seen clips online. My children's baby show of choice is Bluey. So
yeah, we do watch Bluey.
So
At the end of the
good.
day, Bluey's like, if we need the kids to chill out, and they will fight Bluey, by the way, my kids. Yeah, because it's not very, like, if you like My Little Pony with the high drama, like, it's going to be hard to get into Bluey. But so they're like, no, not Bluey. But then we put it on, and then they're like,
yeah, Bluey rocks.
they completely zonk into the vibe of Bluey.
It's so calming. I don't have kids. My younger brother is 13 years old, so it's like I just watch Bluey on my own.
That's fair.
I think there are things to be said about Bluey. I mean, they're not in my wheelhouse academically, but it's interesting, like the version of parenting and stuff that Bluey represents. Yeah, that universe, and how it's not an American product, but it's very popular with Americans. Or should we do the thing?
Yes.
I
solemnly commit myself to keep my hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the vehicle at all times while on the strange ride.
Part 1. My Little Pony and Me. You guys are going to have to pull it together. This is serious.
So funny to me
cultural
because you've been
analysis.
talking about it all day.
Not all day.
No,
for
but-
like a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I know, but like every single hour.
I've peppered the day with little sprinklings of pony magic. Generation 4 of My Little Pony, as it's called in the toy world, not in the TV world, began in 2010 when I was still in graduate school. And in the early stages of my dissertation, my only exposure to the show was through a Facebook friend's posts. And this is real. This friend who... It's all real, friends. This friend who I'd known in elementary school and hadn't spoken to since was a brony. He struggled to control himself in school and was one of the first kids I knew to be placed on medication for attention deficit disorder. I thought maybe this culture of adult fans were attempting to recover their childhood through these ponies, and in the case of the male fans, wrestle with the lingering trauma of the pressures of masculinity, which was heavily policed in boys in the 1980s and 1990s, and continues to be in ways new and familiar today. Certainly my young friend had some childhood issues, right? So I thought,
They're just like
psychologizing him, right? I was armchair
Yeah.
psychologizing him. Like, of course, this is a way to recover, that childhood. I've since learned that the story of the bronies, however, is far more complex. The show's creator, Lauren Faust, didn't entirely understand who her brony fans were. She said in an interview, I'm quoting her, "By far the most common message I've received was, 'I'm a guy and I love this show. What have you done to me?'"
What have you done to me?
What have you done to me?
Like she's casted a spell upon them.
Like
Yeah.
she's taken away their masculinity.
Friendship is magic, man.
She said, "I've received a lot of notes from men in the military who are fans of the show, and I really love when I get letters from dads who say it's their favorite thing to share with their daughters." But the male fans...
The military?
Yeah, military
That's
guys.
interesting. Because, like, I don't know, when I picture military people, like out doing their military things, I can't picture one of them, like, in the barracks on their phone, like, watching My Little Pony and not getting the shit beat out of them.
Yeah,
But-
well, and maybe it's like a necessary balm to that hyper-masculine culture.
And they
mean,
probably
probably.
do it in secret, is my assumption.
what I want to point out here, in deference to the bronies, sorry guys, but the fans weren't as innocent as Lauren Faust let on, or perhaps as she wanted to believe. She did, after all, create this show for little girls. The scholar Justin Mullis, who did an excellent essay on this topic, identifies Japanese anime conventions as the site where young adult men first shared interest in the show. Mullis recognizes what many scholars of the brony fandom chose to ignore, which is that these men were often drawn to the show, at least initially, for erotic reasons, sexualizing and further anthropomorphizing them in fan art, most notoriously on 4chan. I'm going to keep going, but only for a few sentences. For those of you who are really hoping this whole episode is not about this, it is not. But we need to get our cards on the table here. Fetishizing the ponies became a way of identifying with them as their unique brony culture coalesced. The ponies, deeply fictional from the outset, as I said to my students today, what horses look like this, were appropriated.
You were talking about it in class, too?
Yes, he was talking about it in class.
Or maybe it was in class.
No, it was in class. Yeah.
It was relevant to whatever my point was at the moment.
And my point is that they were purple.
And they're horse-shaped, that's it. They're vaguely horse-shaped.
But they're still ponies.
Anyway.
Okay, whatever.
Deeply fictional from the outset, were appropriated into still more unlikely forms in this 4chan fetishization that reflected desires inextricably connected with their femininity. By this I'm saying they took the vaguely pony-like shape of them and anthropomorphized it even further. Mm-hmm. Anyway. In this way, these men sought to, in my opinion, dominate and control, but also identify with their feminine selves. The brony culture's interest in tulpas, which is only going to get a brief mention as well, we are moving on from bronies very soon, just got to get it out of the way, takes on, in my opinion, similar themes. Tulpas are, as the culture seemed to acknowledge, intentionally created, and by that I mean the brony culture seemed to acknowledge that they are intentionally created alternate personalities who in theory develop a personality of their own. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So
essentially, is it super ignorant to be like an imaginary friend?
There are some within this subculture who would just flat out say, yes, I created an imaginary friend, but it seems to have a kind of agency.
Yeah, okay.
It seems more intense than that and more real.
Brony culture hit a kind of zenith as we moved through the early 20-teens, and in that zenith, the tulpa facet of this became part of what they were doing. Not all of them, I'm sure a very small subset, but it seemed like a strange thing had gotten even stranger, so it drew interest. It was one of the weirdnesses of the internet. Alexandra David Nayal, the first woman to enter the sacred Tibetan city of Lhasa in disguise as a beggar, introduced the West to the concept of tulpas. She claimed to have developed one through study of Buddhist occultism. Hers was a small monk-like figure who she ultimately dissolved as he grew stranger and stranger the longer he lingered. Internet culture resurfaced tulpas as a topic of interest for practitioners and judgmental gawkers, with guides and videos proliferating around the notion of creating your own psychic second self, and then some bronies sought to create their own psychically conjured ponies in the model of the show's characters, but did so fully aware that this was an exercise based in their own minds, in my opinion, from what I was able to tell. I was on some pony forums. The 4chan, it's impossible, in my opinion, I'm sure it's possible if you're super great tech guru-y person, but I had a very hard time discovering the original 4chan posts because they're all wiped, right, periodically. What was I saying? Tulpas showed the depth of purpose with which some bronies sought to identify with the residents of Equestria. This serves as a potential counterpoint to Mullis's observation about sexual domination in brony culture. Identifying as a brony could involve a fairly deep commitment, required of any public bronies who self-consciously challenge gender norms by aligning themselves with a strongly feminine-coded cultural product. Think about those military men who we just imagined hiding the bronies.
Yeah.
They're hiding the bronies, hiding their viewing of the show. It's a strong gender comment. It's pushing against, Judith Butler's habitus of the gender, right? Mm-hmm. The performativity of gender to align oneself with this product for little girls when you're a 21, 22-year-old man.
Yeah.
So I want to give them their subcultural props here.
Yeah.
go for it. And I think
I mean, especially because they were being ridiculed a lot. Like, I remember in high school, people being made fun of for being bronies, and then those people being like, I am, fuck it. What are you gonna do about it? Kind of thing.
Because yes, while brony culture may have started with sex, what I'm trying to say is it went in other directions, and many bronies came to regard sexualization of the show's characters as taboo or anathema to the subculture. So we're going to move on. We're done with bronies. This is not about bronies for very good reasons. But I just wanted to give us a nice full idea of what the brony subculture is and was.
I think it's also, I remember when I was young seeing pictures of bronies at like cons and stuff dressed as the ponies.
Yeah.
That was another culture of it. Like they
the furry component.
Yeah.
Very furry community based.
Which in theory could or could not be sexualized, right?
Yeah.
It's also a kind of thing of like, it started as a sexual thing because the whole start of furries was that it was gay men trying to express their identities. But now it's kind of seen like some people do, and then other people feel it's taboo and you shouldn't sexualize it.
I think that's how the brony direction went as well. Yeah, that it started at these anime. But so I just don't want to say, I don't want to follow the brony propaganda that it was never sexualized. There was no sexual component to it, because I've been on those 4chan forums looking for tulpa information.
We've
and
seen
there
the
is
jars.
some stuff.
Stop. Don't.
There's some stuff there.
Yeah.
So we cannot pretend that this is not part of it, but we also shouldn't claim that this is all of it, or that everybody is secretly up to this business. And honestly, I'm not going to harsh anybody's kink. Like, it's your thing. Do your thing. But, it's also something that my daughter and I enjoy together. So it also gives me weird feelings, right?
Yes.
So anyway, today's episode's not about bronies. There have been enough episodes about bronies. Much of the discourse about My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, a show created by women for girls, has tended to focus on the show's adult male fans.
Fuck that noise.
This is true both of the journalism and the scholarship, which overlooks the content of the show in order to focus on an admittedly unexpected and therefore interesting fandom. But maybe the first year of the show, journalism cared about Lauren Faust and the show and its popularity, and then they moved on. And honestly, in those early years, she was batting back feminist arguments that the show wasn't feminist enough. But,
interesting. Like they were too girly or whatever. Like,
there's that component to it, which is not entirely fair, because I do think that the 6 core characters represent a pretty broad range of feminine characteristics, but they are feminine.
Yeah,
with
but
their
there's also
rainbows
that
and princesses and things.
It's not fair because like there became this pushback where it was like feminists were like, things are too girly. We don't want things to be too girly. But then it's like it's making girly sound like a bad thing, and it's not what even is girly, and it's not a bad thing to be a girl. So it just is like, I don't like that argument. And I feel like when I was younger, I used to believe that, where it was like, oh, being girly is a bad thing. And then when I grew up and was like, no, it's just being a person.
I was taught that as well, and have actually seen that through my own family. Like I was told, especially by my older sister, like, pink is, you're lame if you wear pink, or if you like girly things. Like at some point she was girly, but then she immediately switched and was like, that's not cool, and you're lame, and you're weak, and
it's reactionary,
pathetic. That's since changed to a point where all of us don't really care, I mean, because it shouldn't. You shouldn't care. It doesn't matter.
It's the subversiveness of the show, whether for young adult men or for women, that it embraces these aspects of the culture that we tend to look down on. Ms. Magazine also accused Lauren Faust of creating a stereotypically lesbian character in Rainbow Dash. Rainbow Dash is a Pegasus with sort of like punky rainbow-colored hair and a rainbow cutie mark. The cutie mark is a little design on the right flank of the pony. There's sort of like the hallmark of the toy franchise that the show then built upon and created this whole lore around. But the rainbow being a pride symbol, there was this assumption that she was a lesbian, although Rainbow Dash never seems to have any specific sexuality.
And there is always that stereotype
of the tomboy.
The tomboy girl.
Both of them, actually, Applejack and Rainbow Dash.
Applejack and Rainbow Dash are very lesbian coded.
Because I remember that being a
Lauren
thing.
Faust pushed back on this, saying tomboys aren't necessarily lesbians.
No.
Yeah.
It's not true at all.
And it's just a rainbow because rainbows are cool. The rainbow is not a political symbol.
And she flies. Right?
And
And
she
there's
does
the
like
whole,
through
the whole
rainbows,
thing,
right?
the rainbow boom,
Sonic
which is the
rainbow,
whole...
yeah.
Yes, it's unrelated to gay pride. It was, I think,
She also
a
didn't
kind of
create
accident.
the character. Like the character.
She did.
Oh, she did?
Yeah,
Oh,
Lauren
okay.
Faust created the characters. She
Oh.
created the characters based on her own childhood.
I assumed
the
that
way
these
she
were
played with the
based off
ponies.
of like the older toys. Because when I was little, I remember me and my sisters playing with the older My Little Ponies. They were like bigger. They were like thicker.
Yes.
She
more
probably
horse-like.
Yeah, more
got,
horse-like.
They were
I
more
think there were ideas from the original ones, but these specific characters were original.
Huh. Okay.
Yes. What Faust said was that she played with the same dolls you did as a kid, and that her characters were based on the way she played with those dolls. So they
Okay.
would have ties back to the original ponies, but she just pushed them in her own direction. Yeah, we'll get there. In 2018, back to me. This is about me.
We'll get back to
In
you.
2018, my daughter was born, and this past year she went to kindergarten. My aunt and uncle had bought her some generic ponies for her birthday, because you can get all kinds of generic knockoff, comb the hair ponies. Other girls she knew shared an interest in unicorns, and eventually we found our way into streaming episodes of Friendship is Magic. I liked the show because, unlike a lot of children's animation today, which feels very CGI and the images often switch and spin and swirl in a vision blurring pace. My wife literally gets headaches sometimes watching shows with the kids, like Paw Patrol.
Oh, God.
My Little Pony was done in a traditional animation style. The newest 5th generation has since abandoned this stylistic value and is 3D, and the ponies have iPhones and social media. Gen 5 is a
What?
nightmare.
It's awful.
It's so
so
I
bad.
bad.
haven't seen this at all.
Boxy hangs out with my kids. They don't watch Gen 5. Enough Gen 5 for them.
No. Oh, and I wouldn't allow it because
It's,
I've seen clips and stuff. It's so bad. It looks AI generated.
The
Yeah.
lore of it, too, just makes no sense.
It lost all its charm.
Because
It
it's
does
supposed
attempt
to be
link up
after, like, Twilight Sparkle.
We'll get there.
Oh,
These
okay.
people don't know yet, Jolene, about
I
Twilight
don't know yet.
Sparkle's lore.
Yeah,
So.
I don't.
My daughter is shy and soft-spoken, and I also like the way it spoke to social emotional issues and personal growth. I like to collect things for Corinne, and I like to hide them in her room as a treat when she's done something good. And
That's
so-
adorable. I didn't
adorable.
actually know that.
Yeah, her entire collection of dinosaurs I did that with for a couple years, and then with the help of online sellers, I started doing it with Gen 4 ponies, which I also like just environmentally, that I'm buying used toys that are in good
Yeah.
shape, and that she then continues to play with. So the show became something that we watched together and felt a bit like sharing something from my childhood, the same way I'd read her my dinosaur books when she was into dinosaurs that my mother had for some reason saved since the 90s. And as one of those gender-policed boys, I never played much with the original ponies, but they were first created in the 80s. And so this cartoon looked like many of the cartoons I used to watch, down to Pinkie Pie's anime-style facial expressions. And so it legitimately felt like she was engaging, even though it was a 2010 show, with something out of my youth.
Did Lauren Faust create Pinkie Pie? Because I feel like Pinkie Pie was a character I remember
I think
when I was a
Pinkie Pie-
kid.
I think she created them all.
I think there was a character like Pinkie Pie.
Yeah, and
There was
that's
substantial debate over Pinkie Pie's specific characteristics, though, for the show. So the Pinkie Pie that we know, like whether she was too annoying, for example, they debated all these characters. So even if there are correlations in earlier generations,
Women are allowed to be annoying, goddammit.
I know, but not if they're supposed to be entertaining. I don't find Pinkie Pie annoying. I think they hit the right mark with her. But too much Pinkie Pie, you'll certainly gag on. Any of the characters, I think you would gag
oh,
on.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's the idea. I want to make it clear by the way, that I am not a brony. Not that there's anything wrong with being a brony. In fact, I will make a good case for the adult bronies and Pegasisters, insofar as I'll be, that's the term for adult and female.
I like that.
Fans.
It's very cute.
I'll be discussing how the show has hidden meanings for audiences of all ages. So I'm giving you guys props here. But when I say I'm not a brony, I mean I am not an expert on the 9 seasons of plot or lore of Equestria. I am not a nerd fan in that way.
I probably know more because I grew up with it and cared a lot about it.
I also probably know a lot.
I have done a close reading of the episodes that inform my topic, episodes my daughter enjoyed and even requested to watch over and over with me, I suspect because of the epic style and more intense action of the episodes I'll be talking about. These episodes relate Twilight Sparkle's development as an adept to the well-being of her friends and tend to happen in interlinked parts at the start of each season. These are adventure episodes in contrast to the comedy ensemble episodes that comprise much of the rest of the series. In these stories, the fate of the world is at stake, and only Twilight Sparkle and her friends can save it. That's an interesting thing about My Little Pony, is that it vacillates so intensely between these two styles. In these epic style fantasy episodes, like I'm saying, the world is at stake and there's fireballs and like villains pop out of nowhere, but like villains that didn't exist suddenly now exist only for these 2 episodes, and we will just barely hear about them again, with rare exception. So,
or they reform and become something. Yeah.
But we don't really think about them for the rest of a season. So if a season is 24 episodes, 4 of those episodes are what I'm talking about, this style of episode that I'm very interested in. The other 20 episodes are just little ensemble comedies that nevertheless are exploring, issues of, being a kid and growing up and all that sort of thing, but don't really touch in with the plot much at all, and you hardly need them. And anything you would need, the show will call back for you in the context of the 2 episodes. So, for example, I'm riffing a little bit here, but when Twilight Sparkle, ascends and, she cracks the case of the elements of harmony and all this, there's this little flower that sprouts and it has 6 keyholes in it. And you got to find the key for each of the holes. And, the show leaves that 2-episode series with you wondering, so I guess we're going to go off and get the keys. We don't mention them again for 20 episodes.
What?
It is not until the next epic style episode.
It's not until the ending again that they get back.
It flips back to that plot.
That
so it
would
literally
bother
completes
me.
But
I'm an adult.
Right.
I
Kids
care
don't
about plot. Yeah, the kids.
I cared.
Corinne,
I was like, I need to know.
I don't know. She will say, ooh, I wonder what happens there. But then when it doesn't bother, she forgets until it comes back around.
I can see that.
You should just the show moves on, so she moves on with it.
It is kind of fun when kid shows do that. There's a lot of kid shows that kind of do that, where it's like it's fun and games and then it gets super serious really quickly and then it's fun and games again. Like I literally just finished last night watching Gravity Falls for the first time, and it was like it's kind of just a fun goofy mystery show, and then Bill Cipher shows up and it's like literally the end of the world and everybody's dying and I'm like, oh my god,
people are being turned inside out.
It was creepy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It's a good show.
It's a great show.
The show's appeal to adults like me was more or less intentional. The show had been developed as something that children could watch with their parents, a feat that isn't often successful, but was in this case. This was Disney's great accomplishment, right? Was creating movies that parents didn't hate sitting through with their kids.
Disney did not make My Little Pony, though.
No.
No.
This is a Hasbro product. But that Disney's known for this, right?
Yes.
And when Disney fails at this, we all know that Disney has failed at
We
creating
point
a
and
movie
laugh at them.
that we all can enjoy together. But My Little Pony is fairly successful at this. It's almost too successful sometimes. There's moments where I'm like, whoa, I don't know if this quite goes in a kid's show. There was a moment where Discord, the chimeric dragon, who I will be talking about later, he's using a map and suddenly he's wearing Johnny Depp's hat from Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
I do remember that.
This is a bizarre call out
weird.
to a Johnny Depp character who is high on mescaline for about 2 hours. So it really doesn't fit into a kid's show. I know that Corinne is never going to get the reference, but nevertheless, I feel a little weird that I'm aware that this is the highest character in movie history.
in my kids'
In My
TV
Little
show.
Pony,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't notice that as a kid.
No,
so.
you wouldn't.
I wouldn't notice it as an adult. Like, that's kind of weird.
I think the rest of it's rare though that they do that kind of pop culture call out. For the most part, it's like inside jokes within the show that require, I think, an adult sensibility to really appreciate little things that happen in the background,
Like Shrek.
and stuff. Yeah,
The
little
first-
jokes.
Yeah.
The fact that it attracted a fan base of adults without children was peculiar, but not much of a surprise given its aims. Given the fact that, it wanted me to be able to watch it with my kid, it's sort of like not a shock that adults without children could get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the 1980s, cartoons were developed to sell toys. Let's not forget Transformers, Care Bears, and the original My Little Pony.
And Gremlins.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
In 2010, the Pony reboot put storytelling first. But Hasbro is still in the business of selling toys, and Hasbro's idea to update the ponies was based on the success of the Transformers movies, which were selling lots and lots of toys to boys. The highly gendered toy company wanted to figure out how to repurpose the Transformers success for the girl market. We cannot forget that even in 2024, the toy market
It's still very
understands that
boys
there
and
are,
girls.
yes, there are boy toys and there are
Yes.
girl toys.
Yeah.
So Hasbro sees Transformers and thinks that it's missing this entire girl market. And rather than market the Transformer toys to girls, it tries to create this whole new world of toys on the same premise. But the premise is that the Transformers movies were kind of adult.
Not kind of. They're very adult and bad, but
They were really adult.
They drew
Yeah.
in an audience, though.
yes,
right?
they did. I remember liking the first one when I was younger. I haven't watched it in years, but then also they're fucking 3 hours long. Each of them are like 3 hours long.
I watched one of them and then I was like, nah, I'm done.
I've read the comics.
I want to say that to a degree, I don't take issue with what Hasbro did here. As I've said in other contexts, toys create an opportunity for children to go their own direction with the characters in a show, no matter whether the canonical stories are good or bad. They break the narrative universe of the screen and make the experience creatively interactive. Nobody likes the idea of a corporation callously manipulating children to sell things, but the toys themselves are innocuous, if not beneficial, turning the passive experience of watching TV into the active experience of creating the next adventure.
Yeah. Well, and then people like Lauren Faust get to create these really unique storylines with them and help inspire kids even more. So
Yes.
it's kind of, I don't know, it's like a double-edged sword. I don't know if that's the right saying.
The bad part can be the storytelling, in my opinion.
Okay.
Which, not Lauren Faust storytelling.
No, yeah.
I'm saying in general, if we have a company who wants to sell toys and they don't care, they can create bad storytelling.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is a lot of what happened in the 80s. Not all the time. Some of those 80s cartoons were great, but the original My Little Pony, I think, was fairly dreadful.
Yeah, like the Power Rangers.
Right. Are we just here to sell toys? Why are we bothering with the story at all? The story should be good, and then you figure out how to create toys out of them. The story shouldn't be created out of the toys that you'd like to make. Do you see?
Yes.
Story first, then
Then
toys.
Yeah,
Toys.
that happened with one of my other favorite toys was the Littlest Pet Shops. The story that they created a show after they blew up, and then that flopped hardcore.
Yeah.
Wrong direction. The creators of Friendship is Magic knew this exact fact when they sought to reboot the ponies. This is not to suggest that the show escaped the shortcomings of mass cultural product. The 20-minute time span often requires the individual episode's conflicts to resolve quickly in ways children cannot easily apply to their own conflicts. My daughter is very much a Fluttershy, and Fluttershy learns to assert herself without doing damage to her relationships and not give money to anyone claiming to be a life coach, all in less than time than it takes Corinne to figure out what kind of snack she'd like after lunch. It's a valid lesson, but the timeline is frustratingly truncated because it's a cartoon, and these conflicts make less sense spread over weeks. Then there are the instances when the show resorts to the deus ex machina of magic to resolve the character's problem. I will argue that these moments point to a deeper meaning behind the surface action, but I wonder the degree to which these metaphorical lessons resonate for an audience under 12. Certainly my daughter understands the plots well, but the meanings she takes away from the story are going to be variable. The show was created by Lauren Faust, whose name is insanely coincidental given today's topic. Faust had previously worked on the Powerpuff Girls, another feminist cartoon. As a
Wait.
child...
like the original Powerpuff Girls. That was my fucking show when I was a kid. Oh my god,
So you're with us more than you think.
I loved the Powerpuff Girls. I would, when I was a kid, like whenever we would enter like my hometown and stuff, there were these like silos that we would pass, and I would always say, "Oh, we've entered the city of Townsville." And apparently, at one point, some like adult on a radio show like asked me, "Where are you from?" And I told them I was from the city of Townsville. Like, I genuinely thought I was.
That's adorable.
Well, you probably will. You got to go home and watch this now. As a child, she was disappointed with the cartoons for girls, which she described as a series of low-stakes tea parties in which the characters, quoting here, defeated villains either by sharing with them or crying, which miraculously inspired them to turn nice. This was from
What
an
were
interview.
these kid shows? Because I'm like, I watched girly stuff when
My
I was
Little
a
Pony.
kid.
Well, she's more my
Original
age.
that's
My
true.
Little Pony.
Give me 10 more
It's like-
years. Care Bears, My Little Pony.
Because I was trying to think, like, what TV shows did I watch that would have been considered for girls? And I just can't think of any.
Care Bears is considered like uniquely crass. They literally just wanted to create shows around the fact that they had built these.
Stuffed animal
These
bears,
dolls, yeah.
yeah.
On the hub, later Discovery Family, her new show quickly rose to the top. Faust said that she channeled her inner 8-year-old, including the the characterization she'd given her own ponies as a child while developing the show. She was focused on creating a quality program for girls and was surprised and delighted to find that Hasbro was on board with her vision. The toy company largely stayed out of her way.
Let's go. I love it when executives stay out of people's way.
Yeah.
She worked in LA while most of the artistic team was in Vancouver, and they churned out episodes at a quick pace. In fact, twice as fast as she was accustomed to, and this really became the problem for her relationship with Hasbro. For the 2 years that she worked on the show, she developed the story premises with Rob Renzetti and then sent them on to Hasbro and the Hub for notes. Most of Hasbro's input was about the playsets that they planned to develop out of the show.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There really weren't many play sets at all, if
But they
I'm
were pricey.
remembering. Yeah, if they
or
were.
at least they are today.
Yeah, because like
Yeah.
I didn't get any.
Yeah, we don't have
I mean,
playsets.
I'm trying to think of the original line of toys when it came out because
There's Twilight Sparkle's house and her castle.
Oh
She
yeah,
has a
the
castle
the
and-
tree house.
and all
I
that
think I
stuff.
had wanted that as a kid, but it was way
But
too
was,
expensive.
That was it. They didn't really have anything.
Well, that's where
No.
you make your money because the ponies are much cheaper than the big play sets.
Yeah.
So Lauren Faust was the like director, writer,
Show creator. She worked with the team in Vancouver to develop all the characters and their specific personalities and characteristics, and she worked with them on all the plot lines and everything.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the first year. The intensity of the production schedule, coupled with the need to keep the show accessible and not too frightening for young viewers, meant that the plot-driven adventure-style episodes were de-emphasized in favor of ensemble comedy. But as I'm saying, both styles of storytelling persisted for the entire series. The fact that the show starts in an epic magical adventure style and then takes an abrupt turn makes it seem as though Faust was forced to change course, but the epic style story's recurrence at the start of each season shows that this was in fact part of the plan all along. Faust's focus throughout was on character-driven stories and humor, but the adventure stories were also significant. She said in Ms. Magazine, quoting her here, "Girls like stories with real conflict. Girls are smart enough to understand complex plots. Girls aren't as easily frightened as everyone thinks."
That is true,
That is
because
true.
when I would play with the ponies or the Littlest Pet Shops, our stories that we would come up with were intense. Like always. And the one on the YouTube channel, some of them were very dark. Like I'm talking like kidnappings and
But
stuff.
we'll never know.
I know. Well, I'm going to try to convince her to. No, I'm not going to show you guys. Sorry, guys.
what?
Well, she would be very upset if I
fair
did that.
enough.
Faust felt the production schedule was too intense and clashed with Hasbro over the schedule as well as creative control. So really more administrative conflicts rather than storytelling conflicts.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
I
Like,
don't
that
really
doesn't-
see that anymore.
Well, I mean, I guess you kind of do with like how much animators get overworked and stuff like that. But
Yeah, in
Yeah.
that sense. But like a lot of the times when executives have problem, it's with the actual content of the show and less about, business.
She quit, although she told the New Yorker that she felt as though the show had been taken away from her. She left the show after the season 2 premiere, and Megan McCarthy, who Faust had brought onto the team, became the co-executive producer and eventually the head of storytelling for all of Hasbro's brands. So McCarthy was involved throughout and is really, I would say for the most part, the lead creative force of the show after Faust had set it up. So Faust set up all these things, and then McCarthy sort of drove the thing.
I didn't even know that after the second season that the writers changed. Like, you couldn't really tell.
Yeah.
You're a child.
Well, yeah,
it's true
but
that there's good continuity. I
Yeah.
think that it happened in such a way that it was hard
I was an
to...
older child. I wasn't Corinne's age. I was like 9 years old.
And
9 to like 12.
You also have to remember that there's a large team of writers involved. So
Yeah.
even removing the head creator, if you hold to her creative vision, so she's credited at the start of every episode, right? Because they're her characters and it's her show basically. But you can still pluck her out, and if you hold to that, the basics of what you've developed with her, the thing can run on its own to some extent. I'm saying, but with McCarthy's heavy influence. All right, that is the end of part 1, My Little Pony and Me. And that's about as far as we're going to get today. When we come back next week, we'll get into my deep reading, my close reading and analysis of the occultism in the show itself. So if you're listening on Occult Confessions, now is going to be the time. You're going to have to switch over to the Strange Ride channel in order to catch the second part of My Little Goddess. I mean, think about it. You got this pony, your Princess Twilight Sparkle. She's not a princess yet, right?
Okay.
She's gonna be a princess.
Okay.
And
purple.
she lives in
I'm
Canterlot.
picturing myself as the pony.
She's purple.
Oh, she's purple. Okay.
I mean, you can
never mind.
picture yourself.
No,
A
never mind.
purple pony.
Okay.
She's in a castle. This castle is, up in the sky, right? Up above the regular people.
Yeah.
The normal, the Ponyville. She's in Canterlot Castle, where resides, ruled over by a white pony who has lived for over 1,000 years. Clearly,
Would she be a
goddess
horse
figure.
at that point?
They're all ponies. We're all ponies.
Oh, okay.
It's cuter that way.
Okay.
She's living in this castle with this goddess, and the goddess says, you got to go down to the regular people. You got to learn about friendship. And then, after she's gone through several seasons of this, she earns her wings, and she ascends back up to, now, the status of goddess herself. She becomes a celebrity among pony kind. You see?
Whoa.
This is Helena Blavatsky in the Emerald Tablet. You descend to Earth, you learn your lesson, you ascend back up into heaven. It's exactly what we're talking about here, is My Little Pony is actually an occult text.
I'm interested. I'm intrigued. Where can I listen to this?
You can listen to it on Strange Ride, and the first part on Occult Confessions. Check it out, friends. My Little Pony. Friendship is literally magic. Not figuratively, literally magic.